And this is KPFK Los Angeles. Good evening and welcome to another talk by Alan Watts. Alan will finish tonight his four-part seminar on Zen and the Art of Controlled Accidents. Now here's Alan Watts with part 4, concluding the seminar, Zen and the Art of Controlled Accidents. Alan Watts.
The point of view of Zen and of Taoism has many curiously practical applications. And I wanted to start off this afternoon by saying a little bit about one very close to home, which is clothes. Now, when you notice how Western clothes are made, you will find, if you are experienced in packing, that shirts are difficult to fold, that suits are absolutely abominable to put into a suitcase, that women's blouses are the most curiously odd conformation, because none of our clothes conform to the nature of cloth. We try to make the cloth conform to the nature of our bodies, and the results are not always too edifying. When the Japanese adopt Western clothing, they look perfectly absurd, and they have no idea how ridiculous they look. Especially at a formal wedding, when they wear striped trousers, cutaways, top hats, with the girl in the traditional kimono and white headdress. It's the funniest looking thing on earth to see this match. Now we, it is true, do not wear Japanese clothes really elegantly. They usually push it a bit down here, have a little bit of belly showing. They're rather proud of that. It's called hara, H-A-R-A. So you get the phrase harakiri, belly cutting. Not harikari, please, never say that. Harakiri. Hara, belly, and there's a thing that really, if you practice then, you get a belly like a rock, so that if somebody kicks you in the tummy, they break their toes. Now, notice then, my sleeves are conveniently full of all sorts of things. I've got pipe and spectacles and things in there, and I stretch it out. But you see what's happened here? The rectangular pattern of weaving cloth is followed. The whole of this thing is constructed on rectangles, and so it folds perfectly. And it's extraordinarily comfortable. And the cloth follows its own nature. And in following its own nature, it creates a garment of considerable dignity. When I see old ladies going around in frocks, they get those hats on that are all little flowers all the way around, and then they're about this big around, and then they get a frock on. And they lean over, and you can see the tail of the slip underneath, and maybe you see where their stockings are rolled up just above their knees, and that sort of scene is just terrible. When you get to be a portly old lady, you should have something that really covers you. And likewise, when you become a populous old gentleman, you should get something that is a graceful, flowing affair. I once asked a young Japanese who arrived in San Francisco. He'd never been in the West before. And we discussed Japanese dress and why it was being abandoned. There are two reasons why it's being abandoned in Japan, although it's superbly comfortable. One is you can't run for a bus in one. The other is that in order to clean these things in the traditional way, they rip them apart completely. And they iron all the cloth elements separately and then sew them back together. Now, there's no necessity to do that. These things can be reconstructed as this one has been. This one is an adaptation to modern ways. It's made of heavy cotton, and it can be sent to the cleaner just like any ordinary suit. And it's much simpler to deal with than an ordinary suit. But this business about not being able to run for a bus is the whole point. Running for buses is an insult to human dignity. when you get above the age of 20, you should never hurry. Never. You can't hurry in this outfit. You have to walk at an easy pace and take rather shorter strides than you would normally. The Zen monk can take, in his outfit, quite a stride, longer than that. He has a different gear, and they stride quite a bit. But in this is a sort of a dress for a scholarly gentleman who will shuffle amiably along and looking at things as they go around. And you see, it cuts you down without making you uncomfortable. It is capacious. It is supremely comfortable in the sense that I would advise any man going to Japan, the first thing he does on arrival is to go to a tailor and have one of these made for him. Especially if you're going to go outside the beaten track, and if you're going to be staying in temples. Women I don't advise to wear kimonos, not Western women, because they get treated like Japanese women. And if you're not used to that, you won't like it. So the woman in Japan, the Western woman in Japan, should wear very full skirts and be very comfortable. If possible, don't wear corsetry and all those pulleys and blocks and tackle arrangements that women have on the side. Be very comfortable in full skirts. Slacks are not too well appreciated, but the Japanese girls are beginning to wear them. But I think for the Western woman to wear a full cotton or heavy cotton or wool skirt is the ideal thing, which can just flow around and be comfortable. But men, especially traveling out in the wilderness, you'll find that one of the most uncomfortable things is to sit Japanese style wearing pants. Pants, in any case, are an effrontery to manhood. They're instruments of castration. And they should never have been worn by men. Pants are suitable for ladies, but not for men. Now, this is just an ordinary cold stone floor, but we found ourselves one morning in the great Zen temple of Eiheiji, and we were in this great open temple, floored, not with hard stone, but with Japanese tatami mats. And they're resilient and rather comfortable. There were about 500 Japanese pilgrims came there at 4 in the morning to sit and attend the Zen celebration. And the doors kept opening and drafts kept coming in. And there was a Japanese girl next to me wearing a sweater and slacks, and she was shivering and cold and sneezing. And then all our tour members who were dressed Western style were horribly uncomfortable. I have this thing. You can huddle down onto the floor like that. And if you have to train a little bit in this. It's a little hard on the ankles. But you open your heels, and you sit between your heels, and the matting is soft and you're completely covered up. Then you are warm and cozy. If you want to change and you get tired of doing that, you sit over that way like this, or to the other side. But you will remain all the time covered and warm and at ease in a well that is geared to the floor. You see, our world is terribly bad. I mean, when I look at people in an auditorium like this, sitting on these particular kinds of chairs, I interiorly giggle, and I don't want to be rude, but they look like birds on perches. Human perches. Something has to hold you up, you see, and so on. Because we in our culture, you see, we're not properly grounded. Of course, the Chinese have invented the most uncomfortable furniture on earth. The formal Chinese teakwood chairs are very comfortless, but very dignified. The way they can sit on those things, and everybody is experiencing a throne. But being mated to the floor is a very fascinating way of life. There are certain things that we could suggest to the Japanese by way of improvement, and they will willingly learn. There are ways of stopping drafts that they haven't caught on to. There are ways of heating and there are ways of lighting that they don't understand and that we do. But they understand beds much better than we do. They understand baths much better than we do. And this life geared to the floor has this fascinating quality that you don't need to invest in an enormous amount of furniture. You know, the things, the bills we incur when we move, because we have to move these colossal, overstuffed couches, most of which look like gun emplacements. These dreadful things with springs in that are made for the feeble-bodied. But the floor covered with comfortable mats. And once you learn the art of floor living, most teenagers know how to live on the floor. Because they like, for example, to read a book lying on their backs on the floor with their feet on the seat of a chair, or pushed against the wall, or some funny position like that. And I find when I give lectures, and there's a crowd, that the young people come to the front and sit all over the floor. Now there's a Turkish proverb that he who sleeps on the floor will not fall out of bed. And there's a sense of getting grounded, you see? Being with the earth. And that one of the principal facets of Zen meditation is that after a certain time of practice, you feel one with the globe of the earth, rooted like a tree. Now, I'm not trying to say that we are trees and ought to be rooted. Buckminster Fuller would thoroughly disagree with me and say that the whole marvel of a human being is that he learns to be unrooted, that he learns to be completely modal like a fish or a bird. And so that's true. But at the same time, to be able to relate to the ground and live on the ground and do without furniture is a great advantage, and especially an advantage of this kind of clothing. Now, you see, when a Japanese businessman goes home in the evening, he's been wearing Western clothes. He's wearing a regular business suit and a black necktie, and he's miserably uncomfortable all day, but he looks right. The minute he gets home, he puts on what's called a yukata. A yukata is a cotton kimono, usually made of striped material, rather light. In summer it is very thin cotton, and in winter it is padded. So this is a bathrobe, essentially. And they relax in this, and they'll dance in it, they'll do anything. You know, in the hotel, all the Japanese families come, and in the evening they put on yukata. And suddenly revert to this more comfortable way of life. And they all take off to the bathroom, where they have a marvelous system of washing, which is a very, very hot tub, which can accommodate about, in a big household, it can accommodate 6 or 7 people at a time. And you wash outside the tub, standing on the tile floor. You take buckets full of water from the hot tub and throw them over yourself. The whole room is steam all through, you can't see a thing. If you're afraid of being immodest, because the sex is mixed, you just can't see it. And so you wash off with soap outside, rinse off, then you get in the bathtub and you sit. And you talk. Conversation, you sit until you can't stand it. You've had enough. Then you can go back to your room, and if you live in a private home, make a telephone call in advance. So if you live in a hotel, the manager does it for you, and you get a masseuse. Male or female, very often blind. And before you go to sleep, they'll come and they will use their fingers like little nibblers. They're not these kind of tough finish masseurs who go boing, bang, and knock you about. But the very, very subtle vibration of the nerve ends. And you go to sleep. It's great. And this is, you see, a highly civilized way of living. This is an aspect. I'm just saying these things to talk about clothes and bathtubs and rooms to show this very important point that Zen Buddhism is not like we think of religion as being spiritual. I remember years and years ago, when it was in 1936 at the World Congress of Faiths in London, we had a meeting of all the faiths, and there was a final meeting, which is a great auditorium in Queen's Hall in London, and the chief representatives of the different religions were asked to speak on the supreme spiritual ideal. Well, you can imagine what an opportunity for hot air that was. And people got up and they talked about this abstraction and that abstraction and brotherly love and it became sickening. Finally, little old Suzuki got up with his eyebrows going like this. And he said, I am asked this evening to talk about supreme spiritual ideal. I'm not at all sure what the word spiritual means, so I look it up in the dictionary. I cannot understand this word. I see spiritual people in this country here in England, but the spiritual people make very ugly material surroundings. I think spiritual, we Buddhists see spiritual material as same thing. And then he went on to give a description of his garden and house at home, and to make the point that the West is confused. We think we're materialists, and we aren't. A materialist is a person who loves material. Wouldn't that be a fair definition? Do any of our cities look as if they were made by people who love material? Let's take Los Angeles. Take Los Angeles. It is a junk heap. It is made by people devoted to the conversion of material into rubbish as fast as possible. I mean, lots of the things we make are rubbish even before they're thrown away. We can't cook properly. I mean, some of us can in our homes, and a few elegant restaurants. But by and large, the food that you buy in a journey across the country is fried in rancid axle grease. To quote Lucius Beebe. It is just not loved. It's made by people who know that it's good food, and you ought to eat it. And it's all scrubbed in soap before being served. And it's, but it's terrible food. Because the people who made it didn't love material. We are devoted, you see, in this war against nature to abolish the limitations of time and space. So we've got these jet planes. Now, jet planes are made by true materialists. They are beautiful pieces of engineering. And those people, they love steel, and they love wiring and electricity. They know they can make it. But the use to which this thing is put, instead of being for a marvelous entertainment, that zoom as you go off, and they're so maneuverable. These poor pilots have to keep them still like that just because all the passengers. But actually, out of one of these jet planes, you can have a real ride. They're tremendously tough. Beautifully airworthy. And so you could go to Hawaii, instead of just going straight like that as fast as possible, everybody sitting and pretending they're in their living rooms. Make circles, and you have a wonderful time traveling, you see, but you don't do that. So what happens is this. In abolishing the limitations of time and space and conquering nature, Hawaii becomes the same place as Los Angeles. It is being Los Angelized. And it is, Honolulu at present is a cross between Atlantic City and Sunset Boulevard and a little bit of Tokyo thrown in. Because all places connected by jet are becoming the same place. Wake up in Tokyo and you don't know where you are. You have a vague feeling it's Japan, but you're not sure that it isn't San Francisco in some sense. It might be Los Angeles, it might be Paris, it might be Shanghai. It's all thrown together. And more, you see, every great metropolitan center of the world is becoming the same place. And this place is a junk heap. You know that book that's been published, God's Own Junkyard? Photographs of our world, our civilization, what we're doing with it. And it's because we do not love materials. The great symbol of the unlove of material is plastic. And stuff called ticky-tacky, actually, which is a mixture of plaster of Paris, paper mache, and plastic glue. And it comes in any flavor. And it's formless and has no texture. And, you know that song? They're all made out of ticky-tacky and they all look just the same. Well, that is the symbol of the philosophy of against material. Make material infinitely malleable. Make it as completely spiritual, in other words, as possible. Drink pure alcohol instead of wine. You see, that's becoming increasingly spiritual. Because what the spiritual person is looking for is kicks. In the sense of magic, the Aladdin's lamp. Rub this thing and instantly anything you want will be fulfilled. And that is the one situation that nobody really wants, if you think about it. Let's take it in regard to sex. Sex is a highly desirable thing. But it is had on the basis of I get it exactly when I want it and wherever I want it. It ceases to be interesting. I'm very liberal on these matters, but there is nothing more sexually discouraging than a nudist camp, where everything is shown and it becomes boring. Because you see, the nature of the universe, as I said in the beginning, is the dynamics of being are now you see it, now you don't. And that's also the basis of coquetry. Women in particular, who are artists in coquetry, should be a little difficult. They should cover up. They should conceal themselves. They're going to reveal later on, but not now. And if you don't have that kind of element in life, you've lost the point. So in the same way, if there is no distance to travel between one place and another, it's not worth going there. In Japanese architecture, for example, they don't believe in picture windows, except occasionally they have them. They, on the whole, feel that if there is a view to be seen, you ought to make a little effort to go and look at it, so that when you look at the view, you don't do anything else. So you don't take the view for granted. So you climb up a little stairway at a certain point where there is a moon viewing platform which looks out over a garden in a certain way. And then you can devote yourself to the view. But we believe in living in goldfish bowls. And we have these marvelous views, but before you know where you are, the view is somebody else's picture window looking at yours. And there's no privacy. Privacy is another important thing, especially when the population is increasing, and from which we have many lessons to learn from Japanese and Chinese architecture. The art, you see, when you live in a household where everything is made of paper, you can hear everything that goes on. All belly rumbles and such intimate noises are perfect public property. But you get to learn not to notice it. They learn to see without looking and to hear without listening. And they manage to create marvelous privacy by the use of space, by the use of screens, And by using small interior areas to build gardens that in their architecture suggest huge interior spaces. Somebody in a small garden copies a Chinese painting, a great landscape of mountains and rivers. Doesn't do it though. You must avoid, when you make a Japanese garden, please don't use toy stone lanterns, bridges, bronze stalks, and anything like that. That's just terrible. It's corn. I must sometime give a whole lecture on bad taste in Oriental art. But don't use those things. Avoid them like the plague. You should use nothing but sand and rock and plants. And moss, particularly.
Water.
Oh, yes. No, but even if that's sometimes expensive, that's the point. If you can afford water, for example, in Kyoto, the gardens that can afford water very often have it piped in from the hill springs in bamboo tubes. And you know how those bamboo tubes come out over a stone where the top of the stone has been hollowed out into a pool. And that water is flowing down all the time into that. And the sound goes on and on and on, and there's a dipper there you can pick up and drink if you want to. But that's a luxury. And it's a luxury in Southern California, really. You oughtn't to have it. Too little water here. But so the artist makes his streams out of sand. And he rakes the sand in such a way that it becomes water. So with nothing but sand and rock, the most famous garden in the world is Ryoanji, which is made of nothing but sand and rock. And it suggests either a beach or an ocean with islands. It doesn't supposed to mean anything. They, unfortunately, when you go there, the tourist sort of trade issues little pamphlets in English on what each one of the rocks means. The person who did this had no such thing in mind. There's also a very, very funny Zen priest at another temple called Daisen In, who doesn't speak very good English, but has memorized a beautiful lecture in English, which he gives on the spiritual meaning of the rock and sand garden, how you progress from the hard